And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, good morning. Happy Wednesday, everybody. If you have been tuned in to WSTU, you realize there's been some big announcements and some wonderful changes coming to the station, but one of them is a change for my show, folks. This is going to be my last show on WSTU this morning, and I'm going to be moving over like what my contemporaries do. We're going to go over to Rumble, and I will continue to upload my shows onto YouTube as well. So stay tuned on my Facebook page. We're not going anywhere. We're going to actually really delve into some subjects and cover the state issues a little bit more and follow the county. I'm going to also add a segment every week of following up the county and city commissions and giving just a brief overview so folks can stay tuned and know what's going on. And again, if you go to my website, the Casey Ingram Show, you'll see that I put key votes on there. So if you see a key vote you'd like to see on that list, let me know if it's not there and I will add it. So this show I have been so excited about, and we had to delay it a week because of some technical issues here at the station. But we have, for the first time since he's been elected, Commissioner Sean Reed. And Sean, it's been about a year since you were in the studio as a candidate.
Yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a roller coaster. Oh, can you hear me? How was this?
It has been a roller coaster, and I'm excited to do this show because we're not full circle. We're continuing the circle with Sean Reed, but I remember him coming in as a candidate, and he was going against a very well-known incumbent, and he came in here and he said, Casey, I'm going to knock on every door that I can possibly knock on. I've already started. And Sean, how many doors did you end up knocking on in the city of Stuart?
I know it was over 3,000.
Over 3,000
It was
doors.
over 3,000. I still have the documents and the spreadsheets for who I knocked. I had a map throughout the city of where all my yard signs were as well. So that was uploaded through a spreadsheet to Google Maps with GPS coordinates, so I could locate where I had them from my cell phone, basically. So if I drove by a property, if it showed on my map and it was missing, it was either stolen or removed. I know I had a couple issues with some code enforcement stuff where I thought it was on private property, and there were a couple where it was very clear and they were removed. But to me, there was bigger issues for me to focus on, and that's where you had to put your time, money, and energy.
So we're going to talk a lot about the issues that come up, but I wanted to go back to that, and I brought up your campaign for a reason because this was your first elected office.
Yes.
You're, I think, 35, is that right?
Yeah, so I was 34 when I was campaigning, and then right after I won, I turned 35.
And this is what's exciting. You want to get younger people involved, get involved with politics, and this is Sean's first run for office. He decisively won that office, and along the way, again, you had some issues with your signs and just a lot of political stuff that goes on with campaigns. You see it all the time. But I think what surprised me the most is, I don't live in the city of Stuart, so I don't take a stand. But it was the day after you were elected. The day after you were elected, the public records request started flowing in on you. Share with us about that. And folks, this is super unusual. He wouldn't know what sunshine laws are yet. He just was elected. He was sworn in on Monday night, and Tuesday they started flowing in.
Yeah, so going back, election night was August 20th. I found out with 15, 20 minutes after polls closed. And then I was sworn in on my dad's birthday. It would have been my dad's birthday on August 26th. So that was a big day. And as soon as I was sworn in, the very next day, I got hit with public record requests. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm getting emails from the city clerk, and I'm like, well, how do I respond to this? What did I do wrong? You almost felt like you did something right, but then it's almost like you're getting punished by certain individuals in the community. And I would have talked to people on the phone, whatever you want to know, but I think people thought that I personally had violated multiple sunshine laws with discussion amongst fellow board members from election night on. my fellow board members were I actually ended up blocking them, so there was no even temptation. So I believe I have every board member that I've ever spoken to, whether it was past, present. A lot of them are blocked. City managers blocked, all on my personal cell phone, basically. So I don't have to worry about anything coming through from the city on my personal cell phone anymore.
Did you know to do that before those
No.
public records? I mean, it was like,
No.
instead of congratulations, which you would expect, you're getting public records requests. What were they requesting?
They wanted emails, text. They wanted phone call logs, which that's a whole nother ball game to get into, and I thought it was a bit extreme and excessive, but I mean, people are entitled to do public record requests, right?
They are. They are. The shocking thing to me again is you were newly elected. You hadn't even gone through. There's a class you go through as a
Florida
new
ethics,
commissioner to understand the rules.
Which it's funny. So as newly elected officials, you are not required to do the ethics training until your following year. But I went and downloaded the manual, started familiarizing myself with it, and since then I've actually read the manual twice. I'm pretty familiar with it. There's Attorney General recommendations. You can also go on the Florida Ethics website. I believe it's the Florida Ethics, and they have scenarios where they'll rule on things and give their recommendation based off of very specific scenarios. So they'll give you a written response.
Sean is a researcher, and Sean, you stepped right into a hotbed of politics when you were elected, and Brightline was front and center. Still
Yeah.
relatively is today, unfortunately. But just tell us about your thoughts and experience going through the issue of Brightline.
I think people's true colors show when they're put in uncomfortable situations or something you can't control. And I think my election has always been, it's not been about me. This has always been a broader thing that I felt like I was doing to bring awareness to politics, whether that's in little city of Stewart or on a state, or a national level amongst the country. I wanted to inspire people and let them know, like, hey, you don't need the money. You don't need the big timers to prove a point or to win a seat. And I think I made that message very clear to the public. And whether or not people agree with me on how I vote on items, because they're always going to be controversial.
Right.
You're always going to appease someone at one time or another.
That's right.
But for me, I'm trying to get better at making my stance known, like, hey, I voted XYZ for this agenda item because of this, or I support your motion because of this, or hey, listen, I won't support your motion unless it has this caveat in there. Because at the end of the day, my job is to look out for my constituents' quality of life and their hard-earned tax dollars. Those are my two big proponents on why I was elected.
And you knocked on those 3,000 doors. I mean, that's a lot of doors for one person. And Sean, let's talk a little bit too about your campaign fundraising.
So my
or lack thereof.
Yeah, my campaign fundraising, I refuse to take donor money from certain individuals, certain backgrounds of individuals. My campaign was mainly funded by myself and my family. I would say probably at least 70% of it. That's where the funding came from.
Sean's an unusual elected politician, and I said it today in the teaser for this show, is you're an unusual where you're genuine and you're not thinking about Sean is a person. He doesn't think about what he's saying to make sure it's politically correct. He says what's on his mind and what he feels is the honest and truth in his perspective. And I think that's a very unusual thing for an elected official. And you've been in the seat long enough now that generally you start seeing elected officials start to change fairly quickly. You haven't. You haven't.
So from personal experience, from going from nothing to something with this, I can see how it's very easy. So it is very easy for, I don't like using the word, but I am a politician. It's easy for a politician to turn into like a cocktail hour kind of thing, a social setting, or maybe a popularity contest. You can be very much influenced by people in the community.
I think you've seen special interest groups really can come out strongly.
Absolutely. Some more than others. whether it's through text messages, phone calls, someone calling my business, somebody trying to get to my best friend, somebody trying to get to my family. It's like, no, listen, if you want something, just come to me. I will sit down with someone even if I don't agree with their view on it. And I want to hear the opposition's conversation. And I think it shows, even with the controversial stuff that came before the city, I'm still willing to sit down and have conversations with anybody. And I know, the one particular agenda item, Brightline, most people from that haven't reached out to me. Not sure why. They acted like you're best friends. Hey, Sean, let's hang out. Let's do this. And I have plenty of friends and family as it is. My time is very, very thin.
Right.
It's challenged me on my time management amongst my family and friends.
You've definitely mentioned that. There's a lot of work with the city. It's not just a meeting once a week or once every other week. There's a lot of other meetings that you belong to, and just doing research on issues that come up. Folks, if you have a question for Sean, 220-9788, 220-9788. Of course, here on Facebook, I'm watching for comments as well. Amy Pritchett, she says, amen. And Gary Erler, that is why you were elected. They're very happy about your progress forward here as a commissioner. And Brightline, that's the latest update yesterday. The county commission decided to go forward with mediation. And it was an interesting discussion to watch at the county commission because Commissioner Campy, who is very supportive of this entire Brightline issue, said, what good is a letter under duress? We have to work with the city with other issues. Let's put this behind us and go forward. Eileen Vargas, very strong, wanted just to move forward, forget about this mediation, but the other three commissioners decided to move forward with the mediation, and it's, in my opinion, it's unfortunate because the community is so divided about this. And, this Brightline has just been such a learning curve for you. Let's step back a little bit. You had a Brightline meeting that was, you spoke about one of your commission meetings with then Chair Harold Jenkins was in there, and became a tense meeting. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what I was getting into, I guess. Nobody coaches you. Nobody informs you, I guess, on how things are going to play out or what you're really getting involved with. So I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants for everything when it comes with politics, and I've settled in. But going back to that day, it was a meeting, and I mentioned who was in there, and just the demeanor. It was, I felt like if I was that person's son, I'm going to get handled kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you could just tell the animosity in the room. And I know my city manager and city attorney couldn't see it because they were sitting parallel with them. So their point of view was not there. And I was directly across from that individual. And they're sitting there like this with their arms crossed, just rocking away and just steaming and like biting their teeth down. And like, it was very uncomfortable. And I got to a point in that meeting to where like I felt like I was being bullied. Maybe a little intimidation of some sort. They were asking me personal questions, if I've ever been sued, if I've ever broken a contract before, what were the repercussions, and I thought that was totally out of line because it was a personal question. It had, in my opinion, nothing to do with the discussion at hand. So I got to the point where I told him, I said, I don't want to hear it. I reiterated it 2 or 3 times, and I said, you're sitting over there making faces and mumbling under your breath. It's inappropriate.
And this was a week or two into your commission, if I remember, maybe 3 weeks. It was very early on.
No, this was more, I want to say it was in October.
Okay, it might have been 6 weeks.
I want to say it was like September, October. But it was very, very, very recent. I know that. And it was just a very uncomfortable situation to be in. And I actually felt bad, like looking back, I feel bad for the other people in the room. Because, like I said, I'm very comfortable in this position at this point, and every day that passes, you realize you're doing the right thing.
Have you ever felt pressured to just carry the water and not create waves or stir the pot.
Yes. If you go along with the get along, you'll do great in politics. If you just listen to what everybody is telling you, or if you don't ever question anything, you don't do your own independent research, you don't look through land development code or comp plans or code of ordinances, if you don't look at any of that or Florida statutes and case law, then yeah, you'll never create a problem. No, I take that back. You will create issues. You will upset the public still, but they forget about it more, I feel like.
So one thing I've always talked about as I interview candidates on the Meet Your Candidate series is, are you just going to take staff's recommendation, or are you actually going to research things yourself? And Sean, it's clear what side of the coin you are there, and you're one of the few that truly, in my opinion, from what I've seen in the comments that you make, you're not the only one, thank goodness, but one of the few that actually does research issues. For example, you've looked at the comp plans, you looked at the city charters, and you notice the county had in their, I think it was their comp plan. I'm trying to remember if it was the comp plan.
Yeah, I'll pull it up while we're talking about other stuff.
That
and reiterate
not to fund private business. So it's interesting that wasn't their objective, and here they're completely funding a private entity, Brightline. So you're the one that said, wait a minute, what does their charter say? Everybody's looking at our comp plan, our charter, our muni code, and you've looked at a lot of yours as well.
Yeah, so I have it pulled up because it's very easy to find. It's in the beginning. So basically, Martin County's comp plan states, it is further intended that through the comprehensive planning process, Martin County shall. The key word is shall. I know this always gets brought up.
Brought up yesterday by Sarah Woods.
Correct.
Because the city is
brought up a
shall.
lot. So it says in section 1.2b, item 6, it says, protect taxpayers by requiring conservative and prudent fiscal management and a financially feasible CGMP, which ensures and requires that development pay for itself rather than being subsidized by taxpayers.
CGMP, Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. Say that again.
I mean, it literally says protect
does
taxpayers.
not subsidize taxpayers.
Yeah, by subsidizing taxpayers.
So
subsidized by them.
This was the in all my years of doing all these interviews and talking with different commissioners and issues, this is the first time a commissioner has brought that up. And you weren't even with the county; you were at the city.
Yeah. So like,
you research.
Going back to the campaign stuff, during forums and stuff and debates, which by the way, those were the first ones I've ever attended. Never attended ones prior to that election year. I always paid attention because I didn't want to be in the public eye. I wanted to hide behind the scenes, but it got my attention, and I was prepared for county questions. When I would go to these debates and they would ask county people, you could tell who knew what they were talking about. Looking back.
I laugh because at the We Care Martin forum, Sean came up to me afterwards because there were city questions and there were county questions, and you were asked, of course, just the city questions, and you came to me and you're like, man, I really wanted to answer those county questions. He goes, I had answers for those.
Yeah,
so
I had answers
true.
for that. And like I said, looking back, there was a couple things I did wrong, or maybe not 100% accuracy, because I remember statistics and numbers, very weirdly enough as it is. It's in like your archive.
Okay.
And you remember these things. So there was a couple things that were not 100% accurate as far as numbers, but they were pretty spot on. I would say 90% of plus of what I put out or what I did was very, very accurate.
Because you're a researcher and
Yeah.
you had those spreadsheets.
I sat down with the chamber and stuff when they interviewed me, and I respect everyone regardless of where their stance is. When they interviewed me, they're like, man, you really know what you're talking about. We like you for XYZ, but they're still going to back the incumbent even if it's a sinking ship sometimes. I've learned that. They're going to place bets on it, I guess you could say.
Well, what do you think about the interpersonal relationships between these different organizations and elected officials? I think they matter a lot.
It's too kosher sometimes. I think there's certain, I guess, organizations, you could say, that'd be a nice word to put it, that try to influence in numbers or power and strength based off of who they are, who they know, what they have, their money, whatever, however you want to describe it, whatever adjective is your flavor that week. I could go on and on about it. But yes, they will try to influence you, or they'll try to get close to you for their benefit or their organization benefit. And I understand why they do it, because if I was in their shoes, I would probably do the same thing if that was my goal and objective, right? Yep. It's just that I got put into office by the people, not an organization, not a 501c. That's who I represent.
Those the people that you knocked on the doors, which was representative of the whole city.
Yeah. Government is weird. Like, there's times where your hands are tied on a yes vote or a no vote for an agenda item.
Sometimes you have to. Sometimes
it's
just the law, the regulation. Yeah. You don't have a choice.
And the reason you don't have a choice is there's financial repercussions towards the city of Stuart or Martin County, whatever it is. There are repercussions, by the way, for your vote.
The Wawa out on Canner was one of those examples. It was a county vote, but that was an issue where the county had to vote that way because it's been zoned a certain way since the 60s. Let me go to public comment here real quick. Gary Erler, he said, Eileen Vargas was against taxpayer funding. Yes, absolutely. That is the big issue with Brightline, is the taxpayer funding. But ultimately, she was the only no vote against going forward with that mediation as well. So big shout out to her. Gail Goldie, you are a breath of fresh air in a stagnant atmosphere. Keep your eye on the ball. Love that you are questioning the status quo. And Robert Hamilton, we appreciate the time and diligence Commissioner Reed has done to resolve a broken city CDBG CRA program that has done tremendous damage to our 130-year-old historic building. These are a lot of the issues that you've been dealing with, and there's so many more.
Yeah. On the Hamilton stuff, like not to go into like too much detail because it could be an agenda item still, which it's going to come forth before us eventually. I probably have 40 to 60 hours into that. As far as my due diligence, it's a lot of time and effort, and that's where my time management has been spread thin, but I feel like you owe certain agenda items more focus than others, and I have a couple on my radar. I keep them in manila folders, and I gather all the evidence, I highlight it, I'll make my notes, and I wait for it to come in front of the board, or I'll go meet with staff, officials, or if I have to go higher, I'll go to the state.
Circling back to the public records request, you have a Facebook page.
I do.
And you don't allow comments on it. And I just explain why, because I think it's important people realize you're not trying to stop commentary. It's just these public record requests really got out of hand.
Yeah, so when it comes to public records, it's not the device that creates it. It's the actual content. So if something is related to business that may come before the board or has been before the board, whether I post it on Facebook, I text it, I email it, it's your responsibility as an elected official to keep track of it. Now, I don't have a personal assistant, so it's my job. So I have comments turned off because if someone comments, I have to screenshot that, I have to archive it, save it, and when I get public record requested, I have to turn it into the city clerk if it pertains to it. Now, the city clerk and the city in general maintains my emails, my calendar. That's it. Everything else is the responsibility of me, so the public unknowingly can make it difficult at times. Like I said, I respect the public and what they do, but for me, I want to be on the up and up. I want to do everything to the T. I don't want to be threatened. I think it was the acting mayor at the time last year. They're talking about going to jail, prison. Like, no, I don't have time for that. I have a clear level 2 background screening. Why would I jeopardize my business, which apparently I don't own one? So I just wander throughout city halls. That's my full-time job, by the way, guys.
So, speaking of media, there's a blogs and stuff out there are calling Commissioner Collins Boss Collins, and that you're just kind of his minion follower that just goes along with the vote. So, what do you have to say about all this Boss Collins stuff?
So I'm a fact checker.
Okay.
If you really want to know, call the source, right?
Right.
If you really want to know anything about Sean Reed in Martin County, Florida, call me on my cell phone if you have it. Shoot me an email if you want my cell phone. I'm not that hard to get a hold of, regardless of what people say. Now, in the beginning, I got way overwhelmed with emails. Couldn't keep up. I've never been an email person, though. I'm not an emailer or a texter in general, so I think some people expected that from me. To get a response, I'm a phone call person. I always have been. I think text messages and emails create problems, and phone calls solve them. It's always been my motto. So anyway, these people can call me. I have news agencies that call me all the time at this point. Sometimes I'll go on the record. Sometimes I won't, just because of time constraints. Not because I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do that unless it's something that should not be out in the public. If it's pending before an agenda item,
Right.
that stuff. I do think these applicants are owed that.
Right.
That's why we have a governing set of laws, and it's your job as an applicant to navigate through it, I guess you could say.
How do you feel the media has been judging the new commission and makeup at City of Stewart since you've been elected in general?
So, me personally, I think they do a good job overall. I tell the news people all the time, like, you get caught in the crosshairs personally too, and there's times where I don't always agree with them, and I will let them know, like, hey, you want information from me, well, guess what? I want information from you too. Like, it should be a give and a take, not like you hold all the cards and you want everything from me. I don't, where's the checks and balances in that? And that does make it difficult. And I understand where they're coming from, because I don't think people are used to having someone like me there, to where they have to dig for information when I'm just a phone call away.
Well, and your commissioner, let me go to comments here real
Yeah.
quick. Savar Salerno said that Commissioner Reed is doing an amazing job. Joe Neeson, where do you stand on airport issues?
So the airport stuff, I don't even think it would come in front of the city, and I'm not really sure. So I can't really take a stance on certain things. I don't believe so publicly like this.
Right.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to take a stance, and I really don't know what airport issues.
She's referring to in particular?
Yeah, so I really don't know what airport issues in particular, Joe.
Yeah, I know the county's involved deeply in airport issues, so I'm not sure if the city, but if you have a clarification, Joe, please
I think the
let me
only
know.
airport thing that I've ever heard our city manager talk about was, and this was a public conversation, so I can talk about it. It was at a meeting, and I want to say it had to do with Senate Bill 102, and that had to do with height for the airport and landing.
Live Local Act.
Yes, I believe. Yeah, so
Yes.
Senate Bill 102, the Live Local Act. I think that was the only thing that I've really heard when it comes to that.
Amy Pritchett, when you always tell the truth, you need not worry. Amen, sister. That is so true. Karen Hall, good news that we have a commissioner that is a fact checker. And by the way, Sean, people will see your computer up there in the commission meetings, and you are up there. It looks like you're doing something else, but you're
Look at these.
researching.
So I had these bumper stickers made, and it was Ernest Lyons' quote. It said, "Stewart, where peace, quiet, and natural beauty are more important than money."
Ernest Lyons, I love it. That's on the back of his computer.
So I have these bumper stickers that were made, and I've brought them at commission meetings, and I've handed some out and stuff.
All right, so here's a longer one. Kathy Peterson, Sean, being that you are a supporter of clean water and small business owners, has Precision Pond Clearing has the capability of doing chemical-free aquatic vegetation removal on ponds and lakes. It was started by two captains who were born and live in Martin County as a way to make sure the ecosystem stays healthy, provide service to individual landowners, ranchers, HOA communities, golf course owners, etc. I believe it's a game changer for the healthy ecosystem for everyone. So I believe you can help Precision Pond clearing cut-through chemical removal companies. You guys were just speaking about that at the last commission meeting. Some
We
sort
were.
of, yeah.
So I'm pretty familiar with this. One, because I campaigned on it. I actually used a political video where I was in a hazmat suit in a raft in one of the city ponds. And yeah, so I campaigned on that. It's been
I remember
a
that.
discussion.
Yes, yes.
It's been a discussion, so it will come back in front of the board. Um, yeah, it really comes down to financials and stuff like that because they're all alternatives.
Well, Kathy, you'll see her comment after the show, and you can reach out if you like, or either
Okay.
way. So, might be some good information there. So, Sean, what do you tell somebody that might be thinking of running for political office? You're a lot of fun to talk to because you're not a politician. You
Yeah.
are now. You weren't before. You never ran for office before. What things surprised you along the way as you were campaigning that you just weren't expecting to happen? I've been in this realm for quite a while, and there were some things that happened to you that I never expected to happen.
I would say like the biggest thing that shocked me was one, I sit on more than one board. So for me, being a small business owner, my time, right? So that's a big one. You have to make sure you have time, and I think that's why we run into people that get involved with politics that are mainly retirees a lot of times.
Right.
And you can be a little bit more vocal. You can do things differently. You should be able to spend a lot more time, though, being more educated than myself, in my opinion. But I would say sunshine laws, public records, separating your personal life from your political life, and not. I don't even know how you would put it. Like, those were the two biggest things I would say, though. Yeah, sunshine, public records, and your time. So three things. Those are big. Don't get involved unless you want to do it 110%.
Is it tough to? I know for me, you meet everybody, and I like most everybody that comes through this station, and you get to be friends with them, but then you may disagree with votes, and
Yeah.
they take it personally. I hope people don't, but they do. Have you ran into that with your votes in the
Absolutely.
commission, and
Yeah.
has it affected some of your
And
relationships?
It has. So I actually, my neighbors, I talk with my neighbors and stuff, and they're like, Sean, we haven't seen you. And it could be between work and politics and stuff. But some of my neighbors have disagreed with me, but they've been respectful. I will give people the time of day, whether you're respectful or disrespectful, because to me, there's no emotion in this stuff. I'm not an emotionally driven person anyway, so it doesn't influence my decision. The heartfelt discussions and stuff, like they'll try to hit you in your emotions. Well, it doesn't work with me. I'm very simple from A to Z, and that's it.
So, in your 5 months that you've been in office, what's the biggest thing that surprised you in the last 5 months?
How things work.
So, go into that a little bit. What were you expecting, and what's the reality?
Even understanding an agenda packet, what's on the agenda, why is this done a certain way, having good relationships with staff, which most people knew who I was in the city prior to campaigning, which I thought was a good thing. I've done permits, construction projects. I did my house with a friend.
You have actually very relevant experience with the permit process and
Yeah.
the issues with it.
I've done conditional uses before. I've done permits from ground up construction, site plan permits. My grandfather was a contractor. My uncles are contractors. So I'm familiar with a lot of different things. Even though I'm a preschool owner, I feel like my knowledge and skill set goes far beyond that. And I don't think the public or people even realize until they actually have a conversation with me.
How are your relationships with city staff?
I think great. Even if I disagree with a staff member or an employee, whether it's in a department or it's higher up, I would like to believe I'm very respectful about it. I don't get paid to be mean. I get paid to just do my job and do it to the best of my ability. That's it.
Gary Erler says, keep your eye on the Innovation Hub and how that plays into the city of Stewart boundaries. We did a show on that a couple weeks ago with Gary. You're probably slightly familiar with that.
A little bit. I do have to familiarize myself. I have to go back and watch that video, by the way, Gary. I'm sorry. Time.
Yeah, time is it's precious. Robert Hamilton, Commissioner Reed brings issues to the public and not hiding them in the back room. That's truly public service. Thank you, and Casey, keeping the public informed. That is true, Commissioner Reed, and you have actually the majority in the city right now. You all are very open on the dais.
Yeah.
You speak to people. I know Commissioner Giobbe she kind of called out the media and said, you don't always quote us accurate, but last time you did, so thank you for that.
I don't know. Like I said, I read the media stuff. It actually, whether it's, I don't know how you would word it, I guess, depending on the organization, I actually get enjoyment out of it. It brings a smile to my face, actually. I'm like, wow, that's actually pretty funny, or, hey, they got that wrong. And you've seen questionable things, not from city staff, though. Like, there's not anything that, like, totally jumps out, like, oh, this person did this, and it's so bad. I haven't seen that, and I at the end of the day, I won't be there, and staff is still there. Staff takes direction from board members. So if you ever want to blame anybody on how something's being done, blame us, because we're the ones running the show by majority vote. That's how you make a difference. So you need a motion, and you need it seconded, and then you're going to roll call it, and you need 3 votes. You need majority. So if you ever want change, that's how it happens.
At the end of the day, it's the commissioners that make the decision, and that's true of the county as well.
Yeah.
So it's always always.
And in the
an
city
interesting thing.
charter, I mean, we have 2 people that work below us. It's the city attorney and the city manager.
And that's a good thing for folks to know. Those are the only 2 employees that work for you. The rest work for them.
Correct. That's how it works. There's no client attorney privilege, by the way, when it comes to the city attorney. So at the end of the day, the city attorney is going to represent the city as a municipality. That's his job.
You guys are going through a lot of comp plan amendments right now here, reviewing with the city. How is that going? And I know there's been some pushback from the commercial side of it, and I think that the city has tried to alleviate those concerns because you're really mostly concerned about the housing, the multifamily housing aspect.
Yeah, and that's where it happened very fast and stuff, and I was elected to go through it. That's why I was put in the position. I know some people weren't happy. There was actually a lot of pressure. It was funny, during public comment at some of these meetings, there was information that wasn't true that was put out by certain people from public comment. So someone would come up in public comment and say, oh, this contractor's project was personally affected. And it's like, no, I talked to this guy an hour before the meeting on his personal cell phone, and he wasn't. So, like, put real information out there. And I saw it campaigning, sitting up there. A lot of people have personal agendas.
Right.
You just have to know how to detect that when someone has it. So, like, for example, you'll see someone go before the board and present something, and it could be from staff too, and this is going on past stuff, and they're presenting it to the board for an applicant to get their job done, basically. I don't think that's okay.
Right. It is. It's probably tough for you sitting up there as a commissioner to try and decipher the agendas, if they're personal or not. And it must be tough sitting up there when misinformation is spoken, and you can't really say that's wrong when you're sitting on the dais.
And I've like I said, I've done the same thing when I'm sitting up there. I do try to be very accurate, though.
So how are you working to improve communication and transparency between the local government and residents of Stewart? That's a big issue, county and citywide. And one of the things you recognized.
Yeah, so I think as far as doing more of these, so you can let people know how the processes work, because some processes make sense and some don't. some you can change, some you can't, because it could be a Florida state statute, or it could be in the Florida Constitution, and those are things that I don't have a say-so in.
Right. But as a commissioner, you can come out and let the public know it's the Constitution. I can't do
You
anything about it.
can, and that's where I'm trying to get better while I'm sitting on the dais in that chair and state my position better.
Yes. It was brought up in public comment, and we've talked about it before, and that is the email system. The county has an email system that is wonderfully, it's online for the county commissioners and the county administrator, and people are asking for it in the city of Stewart. And I know there's been in the past that said
Yeah.
we can't do it, but if the county can do it, why can't the city?
Correct. And these are, actually brought that up and stuff. It's, this is where I'm trying to get sharper and better on keeping track of things you bring up, so you can
Right.
follow up with it.
Right.
So I have like running lists now and stuff of things that I can circle back on and say, and bring it up. Like, what are we doing about this particular issue?
Are they even reviewing it or thinking about it? And I say they, I don't even know who would be
Well,
responsible.
so
Is it the
that's
city
where
manager?
well, that's where
sure.
you would have to have 3 board members, or the board in whole. You get the consensus from them, and you send the city manager in a direction for what we're looking for, based
Okay.
off what the public
Okay.
wants. And I think that helps. I'm trying to do better with posting on Facebook about things. If anyone wants to follow the page, I think what is City Commissioner Sean Reed.
Mhm.
You
That's
can
right.
search Facebook, follow that. That's a very beneficial thing to have.
Just for sharing information, absolutely. One of the other big issues that you were elected to hopefully help address is the housing issue, affordable housing, gentrification. It's all things we're talking about out there. You've only been there 5 months, and it's certainly it's a solution that they haven't even been able to come up with answers statewide,
Yeah,
federal,
and
county. So it's not easy. But
Well, it's a caveat. So when you look at like CRAs, for example, CRAs are, their intention is to look at blighted areas, and I mean, you can go on Martin County's website, and let's see, let's see.
he's doing his research as we speak right here on the
We'll see.
radio.
We're hotspotted, so it might be slow. But basically, Martin County states that their goal and objective, I believe, for the CRAs is to improve property values and redevelopment. But what's the caveat to that? What does it do?
Right,
It
right,
increases property values.
right.
So it's a catch-22. It's just like when you look at Martin County as a whole, you have different organizations that are funded, and they have total opposite views on things, right?
Absolutely.
So, there's nonprofits that are all for helping the community, and then you have the for-profits that are looking out for their interest and their organization, but they're two total opposites.
Right.
Do you think a 501c that's helping homeless people, does that have the same goal and objective as somebody that's all about increasing revenue and development and businesses? Do they have the same view?
They sure don't.
No, but they're funded by the same organization.
Okay.
Make it
I see
make
where you're going.
sense.
Yep, right, right.
It just, to
See
me,
where
it
you're going.
doesn't. So, like I said, that's the caveat, and that's where everyone wants something. They just don't always want to pay for it, or they don't want to see it in their backyard.
So, how do you engage residents more? One thing I noticed, and I'll talk about Brightline here
Yeah.
for a second. You had a group come together. They had a realtor list. They had a business list. So they had this automatic email list that isn't normally accessible when just grassroots groups create to support or oppose something. So you got a lot of emails.
Yes.
How do you engage citizen sentiment, and how do you reach out to those people? Because I'll tell you what I noticed is the TC Palm, there was 2 polls on Brightline. It was almost 50-50. Both of them, more people were opposed to the station than supported it.
Mm-hmm.
You look online, social media, TC Palm just shared an article. You look at the comments, they are overwhelmingly against the station. But those people don't email you.
Yeah.
So how do you gauge all the public sentiment and where you really need to go with decisions?
Well-
And I'm using that one because it's current.
So I always like to use an oak tree for an example. It might be a little weird for some people, but my analogies, I feel like, make sense to the every average person, right? So we're all on the tree trunk, every single person in this community is on the tree trunk. And then guess what? We branch out, don't we? So that's how I look at it. So you have your tree trunk, and one person's going left, one's going right, and one's going straight up. They're continual, and that's what really happens for your group. So like I said, the tree trunk, that's your common ground where everyone's like in agreement with it, and then you have your hard nose that are going to be, no matter what, they do not want it regardless, whether it could be the design of it, who's paying for it, the size of it, the scale. Everybody has something on where they stand. So I try to gauge it off of that. And then you're looking through things as well and making sure it's appropriate. I think even though I'm in the city, I feel as if I represent the county too, because anything that I do in the city affects your quality of life in the county too.
That's right. And I was just going to say, when you were running for office, one of the things that was said is, the traffic's not our fault. It's because Port St. Lucie's so big and so many cars from Port St. Lucie. There's 60,000 cars going over the bridge every day. Now that you've been in office 5 months, is that kind of what you're finding, or is there anything you can do? I mean, at this point,
it's funny you say that. So there's actually an FDOT traffic count that is available to the public, so you can fact check that too. So if you go look at like the Roosevelt Bridge, for example, and you pull up the data, historically, I could pull it up now and swap accounts and all that stuff, but historically it's been very similar traffic count for like the last 10 years.
Really?
But guess what? We've noticed what over the last 10 years?
More housing.
More everything.
More everything,
More
yep.
increased of everything. And if the traffic count on these roads have been the same, the infill is what you're really feeling,
Okay.
I guess you could say.
Right.
Because on our major roads, the count has not changed.
That's interesting. I did not realize the count
Absolutely.
hadn't changed. So that is very
And
fascinating.
it's public
'cause it's
knowledge.
a lot of people.
So it's not like, I'm
Right.
doing anything different.
And Port St. Lucie is growing. They're talking about it could even surpass Miami at some point. But it's one of the fastest growing places in the entire country. But my question was, what are they driving to in Martin County and Stewart? Because Martin County taxpayers just put out a post that said what's a healthy county, and it's supposed to be 25% commercial, 25% industrial, 50% housing. Turns out we have less than, I think it was 2% industrial and commercial combined in the county. So there's not a lot of jobs here is my point. So where does all these people driving to?
I saw something that the what is it, the Martin County Tax
Payers Association, yes.
Association put out.
Yes.
And when you see those percentages,
It's crazy.
that was astonishing.
It was astonishing.
I'm pulling up the FDOT map now, and anyone can search the city of Stewart. Let's see if it'll pull up. I have it pulled up. It's loading.
We just have slow Wi-Fi here, but this is
Yeah.
exactly what Sean does through everything. And I know you've researched everything, including pretty much anything that comes in front of you on the
Yeah,
dice.
and that's, to bring that up as well. So sometimes the public thinks that I'm just up there doodling and not doing anything, and they think I'm ignoring whether it's public. I've actually heard this, by the way. They think I'm ignoring public comment. They think I'm not giving them the time of day. But by the way, us as elected officials, we're not supposed to respond to the public during public comment.
Right.
I don't know how many people even know that.
Right.
We're not supposed to engage. So I don't.
But it's just one of those rules that you've been.
Let's see. I got it pulled up. It's loading. Just
But
to give you an example.
yeah,
You get another question,
he's
didn't
going.
you?
Yeah, I do have all
Yeah.
kinds of questions. But
Ask away.
what do you want to be your legacy? You've been here 5 months. What do you want to see as your legacy here as a city commissioner?
Inspiring others to get involved. To me, that's huge, because at the end of the day, I have another good 30 to 40 years, hopefully, in my lifetime. I'm getting old. And if I can motivate someone, then that's a goal and objective for mine.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic, and I think you have motivated other people already. They just see you, and some of your fellow commissioners that are up there just speaking honestly and speaking their mind, and not just taking staff recommendation. Because if you did, things would be a lot different.
Yeah, and I don't think staff influences decisions for elected officials, by the way. From me being there for 5 months, I get along with staff and stuff. Okay, so I pulled up the historical data, and it does go back to 2019 here, and it was 58,000. And guess what? In 2023, it was 58,000 as well.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Now, you'd have to probably do a public record request to go further than those 4 years. Now, you can see where it dipped down, though, in 2020 to 51,000 and change. But that could have been maybe if the bridge I might have been getting worked on, it was down. It was also COVID.
Right.
That could be why it was down. But then you look at other roads, and they're going to be very similar as well.
So it is just infill, more traffic. Good,
Yeah.
Good question here, Robert
Yes.
Hamilton. What's the plan for management issues in the city?
So can't really take a stance on things like publicly. It really just comes down to accountability and, making sure things are being done according to how the constituents want that we represent, I guess you could say, as a whole. And just bringing them to the board, bringing them to the city manager, city attorney, that would be key.
And I would say Karen Hall, inspiring others to get involved. Best answer. Thank you so much, Commissioner Reed. Folks, for those of you that are out there listening, the commissioners need to hear from you. Everybody, when they're upset about something, sends in emails. But how about when they're just doing a good job? And I think sometimes, especially on these contentious issues, you need to hear, we support you. And it's good to get those emails as well. And what's your city email?
That's a good question.
I should know it as well, and I don't.
That's a good question.
But we only have 20 seconds, so we won't get it. But if you go to the City of Stewart website, you can click right on the link.
Got it. So it's sreed@stewartfl.gov, and if you put your phone number, I will call you.
There you go. Thank you, Sean Reed, City of Stewart Commissioner.
Thanks, guys.